right. Awesome.
So, welcome everybody.
Yeah.
So today we have Tim White. Tim White, I wanted to sit down with him and have a conversation because Tim White's story is so amazing. It's a very compelling story of how God has transformed you and turned you into someone who you probably wouldn't recognize of, like, you know what I mean? Like in your past,
Yeah,
like if
yeah,
that person were to
absolutely.
see who you are today,
Absolutely.
probably not recognize yourself at all.
Yeah. And would deny it.
Yeah. Yeah. And so, yeah. And so with that, I want to get started. Tim, if you don't mind, tell us a little bit about how you grew up and your backstory.
Oh, wow. Let me turn this off real quick.
Yeah.
Uh,
You want to just talk?
so I grew up, I was born in 1964. That was a very long time ago, ancient history. But in Covina, California, at Covina Intercommunity Hospital. And lived in North Carolina for a short period of time. And then our house caught on fire, so we moved back to California.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. And in my younger years, my dad was a part of a motorcycle gang,
Okay.
riding Harleys and all that stuff. And so, like, it was really an interesting childhood from,
Yeah.
like, 3 to about 6 or 7,
Mm-hmm.
because, like at any given time, our street would be full of Harley Davidsons, and there'd be people all over, and 6 or 7 barbecues going. You know what I mean? And
Sounds kind of fun though.
and believe me, as a kid, I thought, man, this is awesome.
Yeah.
This is awesome,
It's just
man. Like,
bunch of
it don't
bikers
get any better than that.
hanging out, barbecuing.
Yeah, it's
What could go wrong though?
Right. But like when you look back on it, from Tim White today, and I look back on it and see the spiritual implications and all the things that were going on spiritually, like, because, you got to remember, this is like 67, 68, 69, and so it was just coming towards the end of the free love movement, you know what I mean? And so to come home from school and go in the backyard and there'd be 30 or 40 naked people in the backyard was
Wow.
no big shocker, you know what I mean?
It was common for you guys?
Yeah, I mean, naked adults running around everywhere and stuff like that. And I mean, like, go in the living room and the coffee table, there's just bowls and plates with drugs, you know what I mean?
Wow.
Every kind of pill you could think of, marijuana, you know what I mean? Everything was just right there for the taking.
At what age did all of this take place? Like, how old were you for you to be able to remember all of this?
So I remember basically like from kindergarten
Wow.
till, so we lived in on San Bernardino Road in Covina, or West Covina.
That's ironic. Where you ended up, huh?
Yeah, in San Bernardino.
Yeah.
Good thing I don't live on Covina Road, though. Huh? But anyway, so it was pretty much kindergarten, first grade, on through for a couple of years there, and then we moved to La Puente, right up the street from my grandparents.
Okay.
And
So when you lived in the South, you said Carolina?
no, North Carolina.
North
yeah,
Carolina.
yeah.
At what age did you guys move to Covina?
So I was born in Covina.
Okay.
And then I don't, for reasons unbeknownst to me, I don't know why we moved to North Carolina. I know my mom was from North Carolina.
Okay.
But we moved, it was right after my little sister was born. So I was probably, 2,
Okay.
maybe. So we didn't stay there very long. And then we moved to North Carolina. And then, like, the story goes, my little sister, when she was I don't even think she was walking, she crawled in there and dropped a fork or a knife in the toaster, and it blew up and caught the house on fire. so that's how the story goes.
Okay.
So
That's what they told you guys?
Yeah. And from the stories that I heard, it was a house that was like in the woods. You know what I mean?
Oh
So
wow. Okay.
yeah, so the fire department wasn't getting there very quick, and so the house did burn down.
Okay.
And with that, we ended up moving back to California.
Okay.
Yeah.
And so you were how old would you say?
When we moved back, I was probably just about to turn 3.
Oh, so you're
Yeah, yeah.
you were young.
Yeah, I was still young.
Okay.
Yeah, and then I think we lived with my grandparents for a while,
Okay.
and then we got a house, because we're coming back from
Yeah.
North Carolina, you don't have nothing really set up, especially under those circumstances, and so we went to my grandparents for a while, and then moved into a house over in Covina, which was on San Bernardino Road.
And that's where all the partying and stuff was happening.
Yeah. And I mean, we had been there for a few years. Then I remember, it's kind of jumping ahead a little bit, but I remember because it was like bikers all the time. You know what I mean? And it was pretty much like we got to do whatever we wanted to do. And we had so many uncles that weren't actually uncles, but
Yeah.
uncle this guy from this club and uncle that guy from that club, and so they were always buying us stuff and bringing stuff and doing stuff for us and everything like that. Then I remember my dad's best friend, he came home from Vietnam, and when he came home from Vietnam, I don't even think they even knew each other.
Okay.
At this point, and then somebody had said, "Hey, this brother just came back from Vietnam, and somebody needs to pick him up." Well, then when my dad picked him up, they hit it off right off the bat.
Okay.
And so at that point, he didn't really want to be a part of the biker scene too much anymore. Not the biker look. He wanted to be a part of the scene, but not the look.
Okay.
He wanted to be a hitman.
Oh wow.
Yeah. So yeah. So he was an interesting character, and so I remember we were at his house, his girlfriend's house, one night, and I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I was young, and I remember that. Because they would, all right, all the kids, time to go to bed, and they'd stick you in one room. And so we went into the one room, and I heard arguing. And, I was always one that stayed up late. And so I was, inquisitive. So I went out there, and I was like, what's going on?
Yeah.
And I remember walking out, and this guy had a hold of my dad's best friend's girlfriend.
Oh wow.
And he had a knife in his hand. And I looked, when I was coming out of the hallway, and I looked across the room, and I seen my dad's friend with a gun in his hand.
Oh no.
Yeah, and then it was a .44 Magnum, so this explosion went off, and it was deafening, especially inside of a house.
Yeah.
And he shot this guy and killed him right there on the spot.
Wow.
And so that was my first, witness to a murder. And
you were how old when this
I
happened?
was about 4 or 5 years old. I was young. I remember I was young.
But I mean, you still remember it though.
Oh yeah, it was very, traumatizing.
Yeah.
I was like, you hear arguing, because in those days, my parents argued a lot and they fought a lot. And
Yeah.
so you would hear these things, and then you just, go to see, is it him and his wife, or my mom and my dad, or
Yeah.
what's going on? And then, you see all this take place, and I just was in shock.
Oh, I bet. I mean,
Turned around, went right back to the room.
as a child, you don't know how to react to any of that.
Exactly. And then they came and they closed the door, and then.
So you saw the guy get shot though.
Yeah, I saw him get shot.
Wow.
Yeah, and then I remembered that my mom came and she said, "Are you okay?" And I said, "Yeah." And she closed the door. And I just kept hearing, the cops are coming, we have to do something. And I looked out, and I could see my dad and his friend putting this guy in a closet in the back room.
Whoa.
And I was just like,
What's going on?
oh my God. That's when I think that's when it kind of hit me that this guy's dead. You know what I mean? It's not like he's injured or he's done. I mean, he's gone. And
Wow.
so then I was like, whoa, and I just went in the room, and I was quiet for the rest of the night. And then the cops came, and they arrested everybody, and
Did they found the guy though?
Oh yeah, I mean yeah, because the neighbor, it was a duplex,
Okay.
so the neighbors were like,
Hey, those are loud
the gunshot was from next door, so
Yeah.
you know what I mean. And yeah, so that was my first like experience with extreme violence and all that.
Wow, that's incredible.
That was, yeah, and it was like I was a kid.
It sounds like a movie though.
Yeah,
Like
yeah. When I look back on it, it seems like, man, that is, maybe 10 years ago. Oh no, probably no. It's because I've been out of prison 20 years almost. So, when I was in that lifestyle, looking back on it, it was just like, okay, yeah. You know what I mean? Because like,
just part of life.
yeah, because maybe not as young, but a lot of my friends had experienced murders and death at young ages like that. You know what I mean? It wasn't really like out of it, that. It's kind of weird, but that was kind of normal for us. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And the way we were raised and stuff like that.
Yeah, and so now let's fast forward a little bit more when you're, I don't know, a little like in your teen years. Like, what was life like then?
Oh, okay. So, all right. So, like I said, when I think I was probably 7 or 8 years old,
Okay.
we had moved from Covina to La Puente, and we moved right up the street from my grandparents' house, and because both my parents had got jobs and they were working swing shift at night, and so it was easier to be closer to the family like that, and so we went through the whole array of every older girl on the street babysitting us and things like that, and as soon as my parents were gone and they knew my grandparents were asleep, it was party time. You know what I mean? These
Just free
girls,
for all.
yeah, all these teenage girls that were babysitting us when we were little kids, they were bringing their friends over, and it was like, it was like awesome. Everybody smoking pot, and yeah, it was pretty crazy.
Yeah, it sounds.
Yeah, and so like,
No rules, right?
yeah, no rules, none.
Wow.
But I grew up in La Puente, which is it's a really unique neighborhood, because like when you drive through there, you're like, it's a normal suburban neighborhood,
Not much going on.
but it's gang infested. I remember probably, I don't know, somewhere in the 80s, we hit the top of the charts as the most gang related murders
Wow.
in
And you were
Los Angeles County.
you were a part of that?
Oh yeah, I mean, well, without saying too much, I was already a gang member, because
Okay.
as a white kid growing up in Hispanic neighborhoods like La Puente, Belinda, Bassett, and all those neighborhoods, you find out real quick that you're either going to be a part of or a victim of.
Oh wow.
You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
so, and just to say, hey, I want to be a part of isn't enough. You know what I mean? Because like, I remember in my neighborhood, I was from a neighborhood called Belinda Flats.
Okay.
And so by the time we had gotten of age, like there's is an of age, but we were 13, 14 years old, and we started running around in the hood. They had said, the older homeboys had said, no more white boys. They had a few white guys from the neighborhood that were white, and they said that, this is a South Side Hispanic neighborhood, and so we're not going to bring in a bunch of white boys.
Wow.
Yeah.
Wow. Well, I want to get into that.
Yeah.
Okay, but I want to rewind real quick. I had a quick question for you. So, when you were talking about growing up in this home where your parents would go to work, you said?
Yeah.
And then your grandparents would just go to bed. Your relationship with your parents at that time, though, were they strict when they were around, or what was the dynamic with that?
Absolutely not. Absolutely not. I remember at 13 years old, all right, so when I was 13, that's when my parents started going through their divorce.
Okay.
And so my dad would come home. He'd come to the house whenever he felt like it, and he would just kind of hang out for a couple days. Then he'd be gone for a week or two or whatever. But he always, he would always make sure that we have food and stuff like that. And so my grandparents, they lived down the street, and so I remember, when from the age of 13, 14 years old, it was like I could be gone for 2-3 days.
Wow.
And come home, and I don't know if it was just, nobody cared or they just didn't notice, but it was like
Wow.
nobody ever said nothing,
And so,
But if I took my little sister,
Yeah.
then it was a problem.
then they would notice. Yeah. So then, is that part of also the reason you would say that like the streets more embraced you than even like the home embraced you?
Yeah, well, that, and I was, just free to run. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? I was free to run and do what I wanted to do, and we all, all of us that have gone through teenage kids, that's when they, 13, 14 years old, that's when they start feeling like, hey, I'm an adult. I can make
Yeah.
my own decisions.
Yeah.
But in this case, I was allowed. I was allowed to
Yeah.
make my own decisions and do what I wanted to do.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was. It was.
It sounds like you were interested in I don't know, trouble.
Yeah.
Having fun.
I mean, it was because I grew up in La Puente, and like all my friends that I went to school with and stuff, they were like, "Hey, bro, they're all, all their older brothers and stuff were from Puente. They were in the neighborhood already, so they were getting in. It's their turn. They start getting into these neighborhoods, and then." So they were like, "Hey, bro, I could get you in, but you're gonna get jumped in and this and that." And I really never dug with that concept of like, "Hey, if we're friends, you guys are gonna jump on me,
You guys are gonna beat me up.
and then what? We're gonna be friends tomorrow? Or, why are we doing this? I don't get this." But
Yeah.
but then I became friends with some guys on the other side of, because I lived right in the middle of La Puente, but I became friends with these dudes from Valinda, and they accepted me wholeheartedly. And I think probably because they were, a bunch of white guys, and I got my own little group of white guys over here, and together we can
Yeah.
keep each other safe. But eventually we were accepted into Valinda.
So, and this goes back to what you were talking about earlier, right? About so the Southside gang did not want, you said, white guys in.
White guys, yeah.
And so Valinda, is this the same gang that didn't want the white guys?
Yeah.
And
yeah.
so did you get accepted, or how did that work?
Yeah, I remember because we were putting in work, you know what I mean, and was we were doing all the drive-bys, we were doing we were doing a lot of the shootings, and we were just putting it down, so they say, and
So they say.
and so there's a hierarchy in the neighborhoods, and so with Valinda, it's the grande, the corner boys, the midgets, the tiny midgets, the tiny locals, and then it goes on. I don't know where they're at now.
Yeah.
But, so I had two friends that had gotten jumped in to the corner boys, and they were like, "Hey, bro, you could get in too if you want." I was like, I'm not really with that. And at this time, I'm hanging out with the older homeboys anyway. I'm running around with these guys, and so they were like, "Come on, man, this guy's all the stuff he's done. He's one of us, man. It's like we're family, you know what I mean?" And so, I told him, if I gotta get jumped by you guys to prove my friendship to you guys, then you know what? Then screw it. I don't want to do it.
Yeah.
And so they were just like, "You're the homie." So, you know what I mean? So I kind of got a walk in.
Okay.
You know what I mean? A non-announced walked in, because there were some homeboys in the neighborhood that they would be like, "Oh, that ain't happening." But, the older dudes said it is, so.
Wow.
Yeah.
It's crazy how there's a hierarchy and all
Yeah,
that.
yeah.
It's very organized then.
Yeah, to a certain extent.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Organized in that everything started to change in the later years, and I would say not for the better, because it used to be that your stature in the neighborhood was related to the amount of work that you put in and the amount of loyalty that you've shown to the neighborhood, and then it changed, and it was like, oh, homeboy's a baller. So he started slinging drugs in the neighborhood, and he's making a lot of money. Not like he's making a lot of money for any of us, for himself.
Yeah.
But then that's what gave them the
Stature.
in the neighborhood. And so there was a lot of things and decisions that were being made that, like, a lot of us that,
They put in a lot of work.
yeah, it paved the way, didn't like, what I mean? And so that caused some conflicts in the neighborhood and stuff like that as well.
Okay. And now we're in your teen years, right?
Right.
And what did that look like?
So, I mean, my teen years into my 20s, 20 years, my 20s were like, I spent more time in prison than anywhere else, because
How old were you when you first got arrested?
the first got arrested,
Yeah.
I was 9
You were 9?
years old. Yeah.
Like, what, for stealing?
Yeah. I remember we had gone to this store, and it was right before going back to school, and my little sister, we got, you go clothes shopping and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And my sister wanted these sunglasses to wear to school. And my mom wouldn't buy them for her. And so I said, don't worry, I'll get them. And I went in the store, and I got them, and I stuffed them in my pants, and I was like, I've done this 100 times, no big deal. And we walked outside, and
Were they expensive sunglasses?
I mean, back then, in the 70s, probably 20, 30, $20 or
I
something.
was just wondering, like, now, like, you wouldn't get arrested for that.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
you could run out with them.
Yeah, and then, so they arrested me, and, and I think it was more like, oh, we need to do this to, like,
Teach
put
you.
an end to this type of behaviors. And it was weird because, like, I was a part of, like, the original Scared Straight program,
Okay.
but they used to send people to the schools.
Oh, okay.
And,
I didn't know that there was a whole program. I thought it was just a TV show.
oh, no, it was a program, dude. Like,
Really?
Like, yeah, because they seen that what that show did, and, I'm talking about the original Scared Straight.
Yeah, that's what I mean. Like, I didn't even know there was a Scared Straight before Scared Straight.
Yeah, and then they, because they seen that the effect that had,
Okay.
and so then they started expanding on that program.
Okay.
And so they had this guy, and he came to our school, and and they took the worst kids in junior high school and put them in this room, and this guy had done a bunch of years in prison. He came in, he started telling us about stuff, and the kids are sitting there all like, and I'm sitting there like,
Wow.
like, I was just like, yeah, excited, you know what I mean? But I already knew that that's the road I was on,
Yeah.
and so I was just like, whoa, I can't wait. You know what I mean? And
Were you looking forward to going to prison or just living that life?
Well, because like I said, I've been hanging out with the older guys.
Yeah.
And so they were already, YA, juvenile hall, county camps and stuff like that. And so, and the funny thing is, and I'm guilty of it, is, when you go through this lifestyle and you come out, it's funny how, like, all those jacked up, messed up things that happen in there, it's like you forget about them. I guess it's kind of like when women get pregnant, and they give birth, and they forget all that pain and everything, and they're just so overjoyed.
Yeah.
But like people that go to jail and in prison, they only remember and only talk about the fun things and the good things that happened in there, but they never, like, oh yeah, when they came in and they were shooting us with rubber bullets and
Yeah, you don't hear
stuff.
about that.
But yeah, we kind of leave those fun parts out.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Oh,
So,
sheesh. Okay, and so then, You said you arrested most of your between your teen and the early 20s.
Yeah.
You were in prison or
Well, okay, so I remember me and a buddy of mine, we did a strong arm robbery. I think we were 12.
12?
Yeah, we went over to his cousin's house.
Wow.
And so, like, we always had somebody older that had a car, and we could just all jump in the car and let's go. And so we had went over to my buddy's cousin's house, and we were over there and we were smoking weed and, you know, hanging out and having a good time. And when we were leaving, there was this beach cruiser on the porch. And we knew that it belonged to the guy in his cousin's house. You know? But we really didn't care. And my buddy was like, "Oh, dude, I want that bike." And I was
Beach
like,
cruiser?
yeah. I mean, they were a couple $100 back then.
Okay.
That's
So you're just looking to sell it.
No, I think he wanted to keep it.
Yeah.
But I've always been one of those guys, you know, like, hey, my friend wants that, I'm gonna get it for him.
Yeah, well,
You know?
same thing that you did with your sister.
Right. Yeah.
You're that
Yeah.
person.
Let me put myself in harm's way so you can have something.
There's loyalty, I guess.
Yeah. But so I remember I got the bike and I the whole time we're in the house, we're in the apartment with him, he's sitting on the couch right next to the door and he kept opening the door and looking to make sure his bike was there. So I was like, okay, so we walked outside and I waited. And when he opened the door and closed it, that's when I grabbed the bike and I started going down the steps because I knew I had at least a couple of minutes before he was going to open the door again.
Take another look.
Yeah. And I got to the bottom, second or third from the bottom step, and it squeaked. And then I heard the door open. I was like, oh, dang. I threw the bike down, I jumped on it, and I started to take off. And that guy was so quick. He had a hold of the back of the bike.
No way.
Yeah. And I couldn't go nowhere. I was like, so I stepped off the bike and I hit him.
Wow.
And just started pummeling him.
It's just you and him?
Yeah. And then one of my friends come running back, and he grabbed the bike and took off with it. And then so, like, after I beat him to a pulp, I
Wow.
took off. And but see, the thing is, the guy that owned the bike knew who he was. He didn't really know me.
Okay.
And so
So he saw who took his bike.
yeah, he seen that it was my other buddy, and he ended up calling the police. And well, he went home, and you know, because he's our age, so he went home, and you know, of course, they're like, "Where's your bike?" He said, "I got jumped, and they took it." And so he gave him my buddy's name. The cops went and arrested him, and then when I found out that he was in jail for what we did, I went and got the bike. I had already sold the bike,
Wow.
and then got it back. And, you know, because the guy that I sold it to found out that somebody got arrested for it, and he's like, I don't want nothing to do with it. He gave it back. And I was
Yeah.
like, dude, I don't got the money. He's like, I don't care. I don't care. I don't want this.
Yeah, I don't want anything to do with this.
Yeah. Which was a smart guy. I
Yeah.
should have been so smart. But, so I got the bike back, and then I told my dad, well, take me down to the police station.
Yeah.
And I left the bike at home, hidden. And so I went, and the cops told me, they said, well, you know, he's a juvenile. He doesn't want to press charges, just wants his bike back. Can we get the bike back? If we can get the bike back to him, he won't press charges. And I was like, okay, cool, all right. So I said, let me talk to my dad. So I went and talked to my dad. I told him where the bike was. My dad went back, got the bike, brought it down there. Then they told me, well, he's a juvenile. He can't press charges. But his grandmother,
She wants to press
she
charge.
wants to press charges.
They played you, huh?
Oh, man. They worked me.
Sheesh.
Yeah, so then I went to juvenile camp and then ended up in YA. And then from YA went to prison. So I went to, so when I was in YA, I was called what was called a dual commitment.
Okay.
And you're sentenced to California State Prison, but because of your age, you're to serve your time in youth authority. And so I had shot somebody in the face,
Jeez.
and
What?
you know.
Why did you shoot that person? What was that over?
Okay, so you remember the guy that took the bike?
Yeah.
He was at the school flying his kite. I mean, kids, you know what I mean?
It's like
And-
stealing bikes and then flying kites.
Yeah, this guy was flying. Well, him and his brother, and then his brother had took off and went home. And
Give me one second. Give me
Right.
Sorry. Sorry.
So,
You were
Good?
saying? Yeah, yeah.
all
Okay.
right. So then he got jumped by these guys, and he got jumped, and they're brothers, you know what I mean, from Puente. And so one night we're just out driving around, and my buddy came. We were at a party down the street, and my buddy said, "Hey, I'm gonna give these guys a ride home. I'll be back." I said, "All right, cool." So we were at this party, and I remember I was like macking on two chicks that are best friends and stuff, and I was like, "Oh my God, this cannot be happening." I'm a teenager, so like, you know what I mean? I'm like, I got them both. But I was across the street, and we were smoking weed and stuff, and then came back across the street, just got in the backyard, and I heard, "Hey, they're looking for you out front." And I was like, "Oh, okay." So I go out there, and my buddy, I came back, and I walked across the street because he parked at the school, and he's like, "Hey, bro, check it out." And he opens up the trunk, and he has a gun.
Wow.
And I said, "Oh." I take the gun as a sawed-off .22 rifle. I take the
Sheesh.
gun and I stick it in my pants. As soon as he closes the trunk, I look down the street and I see the cops coming up the street.
Oh no.
And I'm like, "Oh man!" So I start walking across the street.
Well, you should have just left that gun where it was, huh?
Well, nah, I mean it worked out. All right, let me rephrase that. It kind of worked out
Okay.
because I walked across the street. They were kind of like, "What's going on over here?" So they went into the school,
Okay.
and because they're on public property or whatever, it's not private property. They started harassing my friends, and so I went inside the backyard and I took the gun and I stashed it in the bushes.
Okay.
And so then I grabbed a beer and I walked back out front. You know what I mean? 17-year-old with a beer. And so I walk back out front. I'm drinking the beer, and the cop looks over at me and goes, "Hey, you, come here." I was like, "What?"
What did I do?
And he goes, "Why'd you take off running?" I go, I wasn't running. And I heard him say, "Hey, you." And I just kept going.
Yeah.
And I said, he goes, "Well, I was saying, hey, you." And I was like, "Well, my name ain't Hey You." And so I didn't know you were talking to me. What's up? And he goes, "What'd you go hide?" And I said, "I didn't hide nothing. I went in the back, grabbed a beer." And he goes, "Put the beer down." I put the beer down. And I just went in there, got a beer, and came back out. And he's like, "All right." So he patted me down. And they ended up letting us go. But then they sat across the street for, I don't know, about an hour or so.
Just waiting.
Yeah.
Just watching you guys.
Yeah, and like me, I'm chomping at the bit. I got this gun. Let's go out and mess around.
Yeah.
Yeah. And
You're getting impatient.
yeah. So got the gun. They took off, and then we took off. And just to kind of like tell you where my mindset was, I was macking on two girls and got a gun and said, "Forget them, let's
Peace.
go." Not really,
Yeah.
but we went out driving around, and we happened to go by these guys' house, and I knew that they had jumped my buddy probably a week previous to that.
Wow.
And I seen the guy.
The guy with the bike, right? The one that took off with the bike.
Yeah,
That guy?
yeah,
Okay.
that guy. And so when I seen a guy walking across the street, and I jumped out of the car, and I ran up on him, and just was right, boom, in his face, and I
Whoa.
said, "Remember me?" And right as I pulled the trigger, he turned his head, and so
Sheesh.
instead of hitting him in the forehead and killing him, it hit him here and came out here.
So your intention was to kill him, though.
Well, yeah. Now, I mean, I was always taught you never pull a gun on somebody unless you're going to use it.
Yeah.
And if you're going to use it,
Make sure.
use it. Yeah. I mean, leave no
Wow.
It was always leave no witnesses. But, so, and so like that, me and my buddy, I got back in the car, we left, and we dropped two other guys off, and then we were on our way up to Hacienda Heights from La Puente, and we got pulled over.
So, you shoot the guy, and you guys take off to Hacienda Heights? Is that-
No, we took off the other way, and we're driving. I'm on the next block.
'Cause
I'm on
did
the
you
next
think did you think you killed him though when you shot him, or did you know you
'cause
missed?
he dropped like a sack of potatoes.
Okay.
Yeah, I thought he was done.
So then you just booked it?
Right. So we went on the next street where one of the guys with us, he lived on the next street.
You're like, this is a good place to hide.
No, but we dropped him off, and I gave him the gun.
Okay.
Because, like, let's separate from the gun. Because we're driving around in it was a 76 Maverick, red on the bottom, white top. So, I mean, it's like 3 o'clock in the morning. There's not a lot of these cars
Yeah.
out driving
Pretty
around.
obvious.
Yeah.
Standing out.
Yeah, we're Captain Obvious driving around, you know what I mean? But, so when we dropped our buddy off on the next street, I give him the gun, and I said, hey, bro, I'll come by tomorrow to get rid of it. And the guy that we had got it from, I said, when you talk to him, tell him I'll get him another one, but we got to get rid of this one.
Okay.
Because, you know,
Yeah.
it's got a body on it now. You know what I mean? So, so we dropped him off, and then we went, like, way deep into Belinda to drop off another buddy, and then drove right past. Like, I mean, we drove down, I looked down the street, and I could see the cops
Wow.
where I shot the guy at.
Yeah. So the guy was still on the floor, or how did,
Oh,
what did
I
that
don't-
scene look like?
I don't, because there was police cars everywhere.
Okay.
So I don't know if he was still there or what was going
Yeah,
on with
yeah.
that. But
There's a lot of commotion though with
Yeah.
the cops there.
yeah, because in my mind, I thought he was dead.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I kind of just thought they're going to be there. They're tied up for a while, so we'll just go home.
Yeah.
And so we come up to the street, and we're going to make a left-hand turn to go to my house. And this cop pulled up over here, and he spotted us. And so he backed up, and then he had thought about getting us in the middle of the intersection, and then he just waited. As soon as we made our turn, boom, he was on us.
Yeah.
And, I mean, we were like 3 blocks from the police department.
Wow. So it's-
So then it was helicopters and
Yeah.
guns everywhere. And yeah.
But did you guys get caught for that?
Yeah. Well, all right. So
What did that look like?
when they arrested me and my buddy,
Yeah.
it was like the next day. They got the guy that I gave the gun to. He had taken the gun back to the guy we had borrowed it from, and hid it at his house.
Yeah.
But they ended up cracking him for something else. And then,
So they did all that pretty quickly then.
oh yeah.
Wow.
But you got to remember, back then, no video cameras.
Yeah.
There was no video cameras, so I remember as a kid, it was kind of like a unwritten like understanding. Like when I would see certain cops in the neighborhood, I would run.
Mm-hmm.
Not because I was doing anything wrong,
It's
it was
just
because
out of-
I'm
yeah.
gonna get the hell beat out of me. You know? And so they would catch me, they would beat me up, take my shirt from me, take me into my enemy neighborhood, and let me go.
Wow.
You know, see if they let you live through this.
Yeah.
You know, and
Wow. It's a different time then, huh?
yeah, way different, bro. And but it was like, it was so common that like we had an understanding with our enemies that hey, if you see one of them walking through the neighborhood beat up with no shirt, don't do nothing to him. At best, and maybe offer him a ride home, man, because like we're not going to do their work for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean, so.
Sheesh.
That's just kind of how it was back then, you know. And we're talking like the '80s. That's where drive-by started, you know.
Yeah.
So we were at the beginning stages of all that stuff, you know.
Yeah.
When Colors came out, that's when like the big notoriety became on street gangs and
Yeah.
stuff like that.
Wow. Is that when a lot of the Latin gangs started popping up as well?
Oh yeah, that's when because like through the motion pictures and stuff like that. I mean, there wasn't really media like there was Channel 7 Eyewitness News and
Yeah.
stuff like that, but like through the glorification of gang life and stuff like that, and you see all these gang members driving nice cars because now it's become. It's funny because they say the war on drugs. I think the war was to see who could get the most drugs.
Wow.
That was the war because like it really didn't seem like a big issue until they declared the war on drugs, and then that's when everybody just started making money and doing it. And so, like, but you would see these guys that were climbing up through the ranks in these street gangs as the biggest drug dealers, and that's because they could pay the guys that were willing to put in the work to protect them and to do things for them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it was all about the money and so they'd see the gold and the jewelry and the thing, you know, all the merchandise that they could obtain from this lifestyle that they probably would never have had they not gone into that lifestyle.
Yeah.
So it was a big magnet, and so you seen the
Especially,
gang
I'm
population.
sure, like, growing
explode.
up in poverty, and then you're seeing these guys just
Yeah.
making it,
Right.
it almost feels like they're making it out, but they're still there. Does that
Yeah,
make sense? You
yeah.
know, they
You're making it out because like none of those guys are living in their hoods no more,
okay.
but they're bringing the poison into the hood to
Yeah.
have their homies sell it,
Yeah.
and they're profiting off of it. But then,
But they're out already.
yeah.
Like, they're
But you don't like
on the outskirts.
like
of
if
everything.
I'm the guy that's supplying the neighborhood, then I'm not. I don't want the next guy to get so big that he comes out where I'm at, because then he's my equal. I got to keep him just under me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so like like for me, I started looking at a lot of relationships that I had with people. Like, is this really about like loyalty and we're homies and like brothers, or is it what I can do for you?
Yeah.
You know, what I can do for you and what kind of protection I bring to the game for you. You know what I mean? Because like, you know, like I've said, I've been arrested. I've gone to jail 33 different times, you know what I mean? To
Wow.
prison, you know, 28 violations, 5 terms, you know,
So you did a lot of years in prison.
21 years in
Wow.
prison. But, you know, like there was sometimes I would do, because you would get 90-day violations, I'd do 3 of them in 1 year. You know, so it's like, it was like, you know, I do the whole year just 90 days at a time. And, but you would see like, when you go to prison, these guys that are your homies and your dogs and like, hey, we live and we'll die for each other, but yet they won't even send you a package.
Yeah. So
You don't even get a letter.
you're only good for them when you're around, but when you're gone, they just kind of fill your spot with
And
someone else.
Yeah, and it's the lifestyle because like, I don't know. Because like, you know,
Would you say it's a selfish lifestyle?
yeah,
You know,
to
you're
a certain
always
extent, because like I've done it as well. You know what I mean? My homies go away and it's like, you don't really, I don't know why, but we just kind of cut it off, and then
if you see them again, then you're homies again.
yeah. But you know, it's like I have friends that are never getting out again. You know what I
Yeah.
mean? And so like
And you haven't paid them a visit.
I can't. I can't. Well, I don't know that I can't because God can do all things. But the last time I was in prison, I paroled from ADSEG, and I was I had some felony counts, and was looking at a lot of time. You know what I mean? And some of those counts, because like you have a C file in prison, and so some of those counts were like introduction of narcotics into an institution and attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murders and stuff like that. All these things that you know they could have kept me in for life,
Yeah.
but you know God had a different plan, and it was only because of Him. Only you know it was in the testimony, and it was only because of His hand on my life that like I'm still alive,
Yeah.
and that I'm out of prison. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You know, and so, but you know it's rare that you catch like somebody in their 30s. I mean, not that it doesn't happen, but somebody in their 20s or 30s that like all of a sudden, boom, they're in prison for gangbanging or something like that. You know what I mean? It's something that like you know,
It happens gradually
yeah,
at a young
gradually.
age.
Gradually. And believe me, if you was to drive through the neighborhood that I grew up in, you wouldn't think this is a neighborhood that breeds that type of stuff, but it can be bred in any neighborhood. You know what I mean?
Yeah. And so we talked about you shot the guy, you get caught.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
And how much time do you serve for that?
Well,
Did they get you for shooting the guy or
yeah.
just-
Well, so the guy that we left the gun with, he ended up taking the cops to the house where the gun was at. They ended up getting the gun. And so once they had the gun, that we knew the jig was pretty much up, but we just got to kind of finagle it how we can. And so they had been offering my buddy 1 year. They were trying to give him a sweetheart deal to go against me, but he wouldn't do it. And he said, I'm not going to take my deal unless you take your deal. And I said, well, they're offering me too much time right now, so I'm not going to do it. And I think at that time we had gotten down to, they wanted me to do 11 years in prison.
Wow.
And
It's a long time.
yeah. And I was like, man, I know people that are killing people and not getting that much time, you know what I mean? But
So at this point, they told you didn't kill the guy. Then you found
yeah,
out.
yeah, I knew he was not dead.
Okay.
And then, but the thing was, there was a person that was hanging out with them, and they knew who my buddy was.
Okay.
That person did. And that person was willing to go into court, even though that person had not seen,
Witnessed it.
Yeah, well, because they were sitting in the car,
Okay.
because they were getting high themselves. And so I jumped out, he drove by, and then I ran up and did it, and then ran down the street and got back in the car. So there was no way that person could have seen him driving that car. And so that person had told the district attorney that they were willing to go into court and say that they seen him.
Oh wow.
Seen him in the car. So that was going to put a lot of weight on my buddy, and I was the one that pulled the trigger. And so I was pretty much telling his lawyer and my lawyer that, all right, I'm done. I'm toast.
Yeah.
At this point, they had just offered me a 4-year deal, but they took my buddy's 1-year deal and offered him 2. That means he has to go to prison. He has to take a prison term. And so I was like, okay. So we went away, came back, and I told my buddy I needed to talk to your lawyer, because the only time that me and him got to talking was at court, because we were keepaways in the county system. We could not be housed together or be around each other.
To conspire.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah, to get our story together.
Yeah.
And so I told him I needed to talk to your lawyer. So tell him, because he would always take him out first and then come back. I told him, when you go out, just tell your lawyer that I need to talk to him with my lawyer present. And so I went in and I told him, hey, look, as long as the 4-year deal still stands, I'm going to go in and I'm going to tell them that we were at the party. I asked my buddy, give me a ride, and I had the gun in a sports bag, because when they got the gun from the guy's house, it was in a little gym bag.
Okay.
And I told him that, I had the gun in the bag. He didn't know I had a gun. And then when we were driving down the street, I seen the guy and jumped out, pulled the gun out, shot the guy, and got back in the car and left. So he was totally unaware of what I was going to do and everything like that. And they both looked at, both the lawyers were like, my lawyer was like, dude, you're just going to cop to everything. I was like, yeah, I'm done. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
They've got.
Did you feel guilty for your friend getting caught, is what it was? Or?
Well, I mean, he was the one that brought the gun to the party in the first place.
Yeah.
But I didn't really feel guilty, but it was like, I'm the one that made that decision to shoot this guy. I could have said, well, you brought the gun, you do it. I
Yeah.
could have, been smart about it, but I just not had nothing to do with it at all.
Did you not care about going to prison?
No, I wasn't worried about it. Yeah.
So you think that was part of like even that where you're like, you know what, like you probably don't want to, but I don't really care if I go to prison.
Yeah, it didn't matter to me because it may sound weird, but I was always one of those guys like me and that guy that was with me when I shot that dude. We're the only ones that really have felony convictions. Was some of them they have other felony convictions, but like I was always the guy like, oh, bro, you know what? I'm already screwed. I'm already screwed, so I'll just take it.
Yeah.
I'll ride that beat for you. Don't worry about it.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And just.
Was there a part of you that kind of enjoyed prison?
Oh yeah. Especially the early years because it was just like.
So
I mean,
that's
prison.
where all the friends ended up anyway.
Well, I mean, it was like I tell you this, John. The first time I went to prison, when I left, I was scared to death to leave.
Really?
I was scared to death because I would see these guys leave, and in a couple months they're back.
Mm-hmm.
And so my whole thing was like, I got sentenced to 4 years. I did 6 years, 8 months.
Mm-hmm.
So I got more time while I was in there. And I don't know if it was, because circumstances just came up and, I did what I did and, oh, well, I got the time. Or maybe I just, like, wanted to stay long. And because, like, I remember telling my cellie at the time when it was, like, days before I was going to get out. And I was just like, bro, I don't want to go.
Mm-hmm.
I'm gonna let this dude go. I'm telling him, give him my ID and he can go out and I'll stay because I was like, why get out? Why am I gonna get out if I'm gonna just come right back?
Mm-hmm.
You know what I mean?
That's crazy that like.
Yeah, because like.
Did you like the structure of prison? Did that give you like?
I did, and.
'Cause I've heard that like some guys they like the structure because they didn't have structure outside.
Well, and it depends on how you carry yourself.
Okay.
Because I remember, so when my first term, I was a kid. I'm in the county jail, and dude, I kept getting into trouble. Like not like, well, with the cops as well, but like with other inmates.
Mm-hmm.
And you got to remember, this is at a time when like it's like you could die very easily in here. And I kept getting into fights with people and like just, and so there was this dude, and he was a part of the Aryan Brotherhood.
Okay.
And one day I just walked up to him, and I just got in a fight with 2 Mexican dudes, got my butt beat, and
hold on. At this time, are you part of the Aryan Brotherhood, or
No,
where did you stand? Because I know that the prison has like you're automatically here, and here because by your race.
You
Aryan, was that like an actual like a separate?
Oh, those guys, that's like the forefathers. That's those guys, they paved the way.
Okay.
So, that's a prison gang.
Okay.
And so, at this point, I'm just a white kid that got busted and is doing time in jail.
Okay. All right. Continue. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I just wanted to.
Yeah.
I didn't know where you were because I know that there's like these unwritten rules where you're like, hey, you come in and you're gonna go with your race kind of thing.
Yeah.
Okay. So go ahead.
But see, now at this point, in those days, it was the whites and the Southsiders, and the blacks and the Norteños.
Okay.
Which are the northern Mexicans.
Yeah.
And so, like, we ran together, like, we did everything together with the Southsiders. So it was cool. That's what I did on the streets.
Yeah.
And so, but it's like, at that time, everybody's looking to make the next guy a victim. You know what I mean? Because if I can make myself to these guys look like I can handle myself, like I'm a tough guy, then they're not going to make me a victim. But a lot of times, this guy feels like he has to make somebody else a victim in order to look like that. And so you get a lot of that. There was a lot of that going on back then. And so I just kept like, and I was never one that I'm just going to lay down and be a victim.
Yeah.
And so.
So you're saying you said you saw this Aryan Brotherhood guy walking, right?
Oh no, they were playing pinochle.
Okay. So
Yeah.
go back. So you said you had just fought two Southsiders, was it?
Yeah.
Okay. And you said they beat you up.
Oh yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Continue. Good.
I mean, I got a beat down.
Okay.
But see, back then it was like every man's got to stand for himself. You know what I mean? So if I get in a fight, I mean, they'll let it go so far, but they're gonna sit there and watch and make sure that I got what it takes to stand up and defend myself. Nowadays, it's not like that. But anyway, so I went up to this guy and I was like, "Hey, bro," I go, "Look, man, I keep bouncing my head off the wall, and it's getting soft and it's hurting, and so like, I don't know what I'm doing, but I know I'm not doing it right." And this is my first time, in LA County Jail. The way it goes is if you can make it in LA County Jail, you can make it in any prison in the United States, because that place it's off the chain. It's crazy. And so at the point I was at, it was like, I'm either gonna go soft or I'm gonna get killed if I don't change the way I go after things. Because on the streets, it was just like, I just go put in the work and I get the notoriety. But in here, it's not like that. You know what I mean? And so he was pretty, happy that I would do that. He goes, "Man," because you got to remember, I was like 130 pounds soaking wet. You know what I mean? I was a little guy. You know what I mean? And so, I'm sure that a lot of people had victim written all over me,
Wow.
And so he was like, "Okay." So he, what we call, took me under his wing, and he started telling me, "Hey, like giving me scenarios and situations and just ghosting him and walking behind him and following him."
Just kind of how to handle yourself in prison.
Yeah, because it was either you're going to be his old lady or you're going to be his shadow, you know what I mean? Like that guy that he's schooling, he's bringing up. And so he made it plain to everybody, like, "Hey, this kid is with me now. He's not a punk, he's not a sissy, but he's with me, and I'm going to show him the ropes.
Yeah.
So back up." You know what I mean? And he was one of those guys that had juice and had a say-so and all that. And so I always looked at that like, all right, you know what? I might not have the keys to this yarn, but I'm going to have a say-so on it. You know what I mean? And so from then on.
So you're already thinking about, like, how are you going to move up even in prison?
Well, I'm at this point, I'm thinking about how am I going to survive, because, like, even my dad had told me, he says, "Dude, you better figure it out, because the way you are, this is your life." You know what I mean? And so you better figure it out and figure out how you're going to survive in here.
Yeah.
And so I did, you know what I mean? And I got really good at it, really good at it. And so after I went through my steps with that dude, it was pretty much like, I told him, I don't want people to say, "Well, you're friends with him, you're under him, so you're off limits." You know what I mean? I told him I don't want that. I want to be able to stand on my own 2 feet. I want to be my own man.
Wow.
And so he said, "You got it, brother." And so he just said, he is who he is, and he'll do what he does. And if he messes up, he goes, "I'll put the hit on him
Myself.
if that's what it comes to." He doesn't have any carte blanche or anything like that. You know what I mean? But I always try to approach things with a level head, and not just like, "Hey, you're a white guy, so I'm going to take your side no matter what."
Yeah.
Because like I always try to weigh the consequences. If this is going to put every white guy in this prison at odds with another race and potentially at war because you screwed up, we're not going to do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's crazy.
Yeah, I mean, and it's the thing, bro, because like once you hit that yard, you can be one of those guys like, "Hey, I just want to do my time and
get out."
Get out. Okay, that's fine.
Do they respect that, or
To a certain extent,
okay? Because they're like, you're still in here.
you're still in here. And I remember one of the big guys told me one time, he says, when you come on my yard, he goes, I'm going to find out real quick where you stand.
Wow,
And he said,
man, that's intimidating.
yeah. And he said, you're either going to stand with us or you're going to leave, because I ain't going to have you on my yard sucking up air for a good one.
Wow.
A good MFer is what he said.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, because at any time you could be called to battle. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
At a moment's notice, and we don't want to find out at that point that you're solid.
So did they test you in prison?
Oh yeah, you're tested all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What did that look like? Is it
I
just like
mean,
people walking up on you and
just say things or do things to see what your reaction is, and based on your reaction is where they see how you're gonna. And if you react in a way that is not favorable in their eyes, then they'll take it to the next step, and then the next step, and then they're gonna see at what point will you collapse or will you fold.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm. Did you ever get put in a position where there's just no win? You know what I mean? Like, because I've heard of stories where like this person runs up on him, the guy defends himself, knocks him out, but now like everybody has a hit on that guy.
Yeah.
Does that make sense? And now he's like, okay, I defended myself, but like everybody now is against me, kind of thing. Like,
Yeah.
did you ever get put yourself in? Get put in a situation like that?
Not per se that,
Mm-hmm.
because like I always approached it like I got control. I got the keys to my first yard when I was 26.
So what does that mean? Get the keys to the yard?
Like for the white guys, for every white dude on that yard, I say what happens.
Wow.
So
So you like negotiate and things like that with?
Yeah, I would be the one that, like, if the Mexicans or the blacks or the Norteños or the Asians or the Pacific Islander, if anybody had an issue with the white guy, because out of respect, you never jump on another race.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You'll have isolated incidents of one-on-ones and stuff like that, but we would never attack another race unless we talked to them and we negotiated something with them. And so that means that, like, when it comes to white guys, my say-so is that's it.
Mm-hmm.
But I never really like to run it like that, because
Did you ever get challenged?
by my own people,
No.
no, because usually, like, a couple times I got yards that were they've stripped it from one person and gave it to me. And but I always try to make my decisions based on a level head, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I usually, when I would get control of the yard, I would run it as a committee.
Okay.
So each building, usually there's 5 buildings on a yard. There's 4 housing units in the gym, and they house people in the gym. And so then each building has its own shot caller that deals with that building. And then you have one guy that controls the whole yard. So I would never try to base my decisions only on what I'm thinking or what I'm going through or the information that I have. I would usually call a committee meeting, and and everybody knew when they seen us sitting out in the yard, in the middle of the yard, talking, that something was up.
Wow.
And so I would bring those guys out, and we would talk, and we would go over things and whatever the situation was, and then I would give my suggestion, and then I would,
Hear everybody out.
yeah, and then we're either gonna roll with my suggestion, or if somebody's got something better, please speak up, because
Yeah. But if
this could get ugly.
there's no decision, ultimately you had to make the decision,
Yes,
right?
yeah. If it was my yard, there was many times that like I've been on yards, and just like I always would approach whoever had the key. First question I'd ask people when I got on the yard, because they come up to you and like, hey bro, you just get here? Yeah, well, obviously. Did you see me yesterday? You know what I mean? But I would just be like, they'd always like, hey, you want a cigarette? Whatever. back then. They don't have it no more. But I would just like, hey, who's got the keys to the yard?
You already knew.
Yeah, and they always ask, where you from? Because, you know, each car has their own. You're like, so I'm from SGV. I'm from SGV. They call me this. You know what I mean? And so then I would just like, who's got the yard? And they'd be like, oh, this dude over here's got the yard. Okay, well, do me a favor. Tell that brother I like to holler at him. You know what I mean? And I would just always have to sit down with that guy and just tell him, hey, bro, you know, this is who I am. You know, because I had built a reputation for myself throughout the system. So basically, when I hit a yard, they knew who I. You know, once they hear my name, they knew who I am. They've heard of me, and so.
Would they ever just give you the keys?
No, I mean generally not, because there's some perks that come along with that. Nobody in their right mind is going to want to give up.
Yeah. Okay.
But it's all in what you do with it. You know. What I
How
mean?
how old were you when you got your like the keys to the yard the first time?
The first time, 26.
26.
26 years old.
Would you say you were young?
That's pretty young to get your own yard. Yeah.
So then you had to put in work to do that.
Yeah. Well, that one was kind of like a default situation.
Okay.
Because the guy that had him got into some stuff and he went to the hole and stuff. And so that seat was vacated. And basically people were like, well, I don't want to do that, you know what I mean? And there was some older guys on the yard, and then a couple of the older guys said, well, you know what, this guy, he's young, but he's got a good head on his shoulders. And he's capable and ready to make decisions, and isn't really like, once I make a decision, I run with it.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's it.
You're not flip-flopping.
Yeah,
things.
yeah. I'm not gonna.
So you've been in prison, you're in and out of prison, right, at this time?
Yeah.
So what does it look like when you leave prison? Like, what does your life look like at that point?
I mean,
Like, are you preparing to go right back to prison, or are you hoping you don't go back, or?
well, it's kind of like you just like, it's inevitable. It's gonna happen. You know what I mean? It's just, you know, and it's funny because back in the day, I used to be able to just make a package and go down to Chino and tell them, hey, I want to turn myself in for a 90-day observation. Yeah. And they would call your parole agent and say, hey, Tim White's here, you know, E68296, or my old number, D14519, and he's wanting to turn himself in for a 90-day observation.
Why would you do that, though?
Yeah, well, because like a lot of times, so when you parole, California has a mandatory 3 years of parole, right? Doesn't matter if you do all your time or whatever, you're going to do 3 years on parole. Or I don't know what they do now, but back then that's how it was. And so when you get a violation, they can extend your parole time up to 1 year. So you got 3 years, they can extend it 1 year, that's 4 years maximum, right?
Yeah.
As long as you don't catch a new case and go to court and all that,
Because then it'll just keep extending.
4 years you're gonna get off parole. So if I'm out there and I'm running amok, you know what I mean? I'm running around, I got drugs, I got guns on me, and I'm doing stuff and everything like that. And I get this moment of clarity, and I'm like, oh my God, I'm gonna mess around and catch a new case.
Yeah.
Okay, let me go turn myself in, do this 90-day observation, do a 90-day dry out, and then it's gonna extend me. That's another 90 days. I don't got to worry about it. And then if I can get this 4 years in,
Wow.
then I'm off parole.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And then because like it's a big difference when you get pulled over and the cop says, "Are you on probation or parole?"
Yeah.
Because as soon as you say, "Yeah," you don't have any rights.
Wow.
You're getting searched. Your car's getting searched. You know what I mean? Everything like that. So, but it was just so hard to get that fourth year in. I'd always end up with a new case. So.
Wow. And that went on for up till what age? What was the last time you were like, the last time you went to prison, and what led to that being the last time in prison?
So the last time I was in prison, I went in I think it was 2001.
Wow.
And it was funny because I was staying in this house, and right around the corner I had a homeboy living there, and we were both doing bad, you know what I mean? And I had got some speed, and I said, well, I'm gonna go up here and get high with homie, and I was riding this stolen bicycle.
Back to the bicycle.
Another stolen bicycle. But now I'm in my 30s.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And so, but I'm just going right around the corner. So I grabbed this bicycle. It's stolen. I didn't steal it, but I knew it was stolen. And I'm going around the corner. And this girl I'm staying with, we're arguing. So she's yelling down the street at me and this, that, and the other. And I'm just like, yeah, whatever. And she's like, well, come back and get your stuff and get out of here. And I was like, well, I'll be back later. You know what I mean? Well, then I'm walking down the street and the cops roll by. And they're like, hey, he's this and that. You know, like he's running on parole.
Who started yelling that?
The girl I was messing with.
Oh my
And
goodness.
I'm like, really? So they end up rolling up on me, and I had a little baggie of dope, and they took me in for the baggie of dope. And so,
And you were on parole at this time.
yeah, I was actually.
You're trying to get those 4 years in?
Yeah, I was trying. It wasn't working. It wasn't working. And as soon as they pulled that bag out of my pocket, I was like, oh man, a new case.
Yeah.
A new case. So I got to go do this time, then get out and do another 3 years on parole. And really at that time, I didn't think I was done. You know what I mean? I didn't really think I was done until I was done. Really, you know what I mean? Then I knew I was done, but you know, like so. That last time when I was in prison, you know, there was some stabbings and a bunch of violence and we were doing a lot of drugs. We were in a drug program. It's weird because you would think, like, they have these drug programs in prisons, and those yards seem to have the most drugs. It's weird. I guess when you say, "Oh, all you drug addicts, let's put you over here," they're gonna figure out ways to get that drugs in.
Yeah, they're gonna figure it out.
Yeah. So, but I mean, I had gotten to the point where I was like, you know what? Because when I was a kid, it was fun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? When I was younger, it was fun, man, because like it was. I would get out, and it was like everybody was so happy to see you when you got out. You know, like, oh man, oh, it's good to see you, and they want to have a party, and you're the guy. You know what I mean? It's like the presidential parade and all this, and then you know, pretty soon that all wears off. And you're just another guy in the neighborhood again, you know what I mean? It's like, and then, you know, you're doing so much dope, you're not eating, and you're losing weight, and all that work that you put in, exercising and doing all that.
It just goes out the window.
It's, just melting away. And then, you know, you're committing felonies on a daily basis, and you're just like, wow. And then you go back in prison, and then it used to be like, you walk in and it's like, hey, bro, you're back, and hey, good to see you, and and it was that, you know what I mean? But the difference was when you went back in, it was like the notoriety never, like once you hit that stature of like you're one of those guys, that notoriety doesn't wear off, you know what I mean? Everybody always respects you. Everybody always like, hey, bro, can I get you anything? Do you need anything? You know what I mean? And just, you know, whether they do it or not, or whether you take it or not, it doesn't matter, because like it's like, hey, I'm that guy. You know what I mean? And so, but then it started like not being like that no more. It
Started getting old or what?
Well, it was because like you could go on the yard, like when you hit a yard, you were like, you knew pretty much, give or take, everybody on that yard's solid. You know what I mean? Everybody's like down to get down right now. And the one thing was like the Christians always, like for me, they always got a pass. Like, you do what you got to do, you know, just like stay out of the way. And
so Christians, even in prison, were looked at differently, or what do you mean by that?
Well, I mean, like, because like some guys, they look at it like, I don't care if you're a Christian or not. If we go to war on this yard, you better be out there putting in work.
Yeah.
And for me, it was like, hey, you know what? This guy's changed it. He's trying to change his life. You know what I mean? And I don't know. It's because like I always had family members that prayed for me. You know what I mean? And I always thought like it's important to have people praying for you.
Yeah.
And like, so if I go tell these guys, hey, look, man, as long as you guys aren't out here doing spreads and eating together, different races on the yard,
Yeah.
and all that, just you do you in the church. If we go to war out here, if we have a problem out here, don't come out. Stay in your cell, and don't say nothing. You don't have a say so in anything. All
Yeah.
right? Just do you. Just do what you're doing.
And you don't even realize that God was probably using you even in that moment to protect other people. You know.
Yeah, maybe. But I always looked at it like, hey, you know what? Just by giving them that, they're probably praying for me. Like,
Yeah.
Like, hey,
And that's what you wanted is just receive prayers.
I don't know that it was that, but just because I remember as a kid that we would go to my aunt and uncles, and they were really like into church, and we would go stay 2 weeks with them every year, every summer, and in that 2 weeks, every day from sunup to sundown, we were in church.
Wow.
And I just always felt like, because like in my childhood, with so much chaos going on at my house, and to go to my aunt and uncles, and it was like the Brady Bunch, you know what I mean? It was like,
So different, huh?
so completely different.
Did you like it, or is there a part
Oh,
of you?
I loved it. I loved it. Yeah, I mean, because like, it was like, we would have a fire in the fireplace, and you get the old basket popcorn popper, and we pop popcorn and watch a
Yeah.
movie and go to church, and it's
Yeah.
like, oh my God, I watched this on TV,
Yeah, and you
and
didn't.
then I get to live this for 2 weeks out of the year.
I'm sure you felt like this isn't real until you experience it. And you're
Right.
like, people really do live like this.
Yeah, some people do live like this.
Yeah.
This is what life probably should be like, but this is my normal over here. All this chaos and violence and drugs and all that stuff. And so that's my normal. So I get to go on vacation for a couple of weeks out of the year, away
Yeah.
from my normal screwed up life, and I get to live like the Brady Bunch. You know what I mean?
And so, you were saying that you saw people like that in prison, that the Christians were separated.
Yeah.
You wanted them to pray for you sometimes.
Well, I mean, not really so much that I wanted them to pray for me, but I seen the value of it. You know what I mean? And I knew that, like, hey, if I treat them nice, maybe they'll pray for me. You know what I mean? Maybe they'll pray
Yeah.
for me. Maybe they'll be like, hey, well, you know what? Of all the a-holes, he's not the biggest one.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So I don't know. I don't know what it was, but I always just felt like, hey, you know what? We shouldn't be messing with those guys. You know what I mean? I mean, maybe that group was so small. You know what I mean? It was so small
Wow.
that they're not a threat. You know what I mean? And if we're at war with the blacks, there's just as many black guys in that group as there are white guys. So they're missing as many warriors as we
Yeah.
are. So really,
Wow.
does it make a big difference? So just leave them be. Let them do them.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And so then you were having a change of heart while you were in prison then?
Yeah, because like I started seeing the change of like how it was structuring, you know what I mean? And it was really weird because you look back on it and it had been a long time coming, but it was it really didn't matter if you were a good stand-up guy or if you were that guy or any guy. It was if circumstances dictated that somebody had to be thrown to the wolves in order to make the machine keep going, then it was like, if I'm second in line, I need to throw the guy first in line to the wolves before anybody, you know what I mean?
Wow.
And it was like, because we went from a lifestyle of, well, where's your proof? Where's the paperwork? Where's this? Where's that? You know what I mean? To, oh, he said it first, so it must be.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And so, you know, it was like I seen a lot of good dudes that like were upstanding, you know, I guess inmates are. There's a difference. So there's inmates and convicts, and from the dawn of time, it was always if you took a deal or whatever, they would say, "Oh, he's an inmate because he signed up for this."
I didn't even know about this.
Yeah, and then so back in the day, if you were a convict, if you were convicted, and so in the latter years when I came around, it was like you looked at it like if somebody called me an inmate, I'd be like, "What'd you say?"
That's offensive.
I'd be offended.
Wow.
Because no, I've taken deals. You know what I mean? I've signed on the dotted line, but in my day, it was a convict was a badge of honor. When you called the guy, "Hey, convict," yeah, that was a badge of honor. When you were called an inmate, that was like one of the worst things you could be called.
I didn't even know about that.
Yeah, so because we looked at it like, hey, a convict is a stand-up guy. He's and an inmate is just a guy that got time. He's just got a number and he's doing his time.
He's willing to like give up people and things like that.
Do whatever he has to do to survive, and that's like the correlation between being a convict and being a Christian, because like I really love the scripture where he says, no greater honor than to lay down one's life for his friends, and that's the way I've lived for years. That was our code, you know what I mean? No greater honor than to die for my friends, you know what I mean? I remember being on the yard, and we were gonna get into it with the black guys, and there was 130 of black guys on the yard.
Wow.
And there were 7 white dudes.
No way.
Yeah, and I remember.
It's a death sentence.
Yeah, and I remember this kid. He was next to me, and he was sitting there and he's heaving, like
nervously.
And
it's like going to war.
Yeah, and I told him, "Bro, you all right?" And he goes, "Yeah, I'm just kind of excited right now." And he was excited. You know what I mean? He said, "We're gonna go to war right now, and we're probably gonna die." You know what I mean? Because it's 130 to 7.
Yeah. This is not gonna look good.
Yeah, but it was just like, this is what's happening right now. And I had no greater pride than when I got up and I started walking across that yard towards them, and I had a bunch of youngsters with me, and they all got up and they said, "Come on, let's do this."
Sheesh.
And
did you guys end up fighting?
no, thank God. They ended up cracking rounds on the yard, because they would usually fire 3 rounds, and then everybody get down. Anybody standing after that was open game.
Sheesh.
You get shot.
Wow.
So,
man.
yeah, and then there's that going through prison. You know, what I mean?
Yeah.
People when melees start, because a lot of times you lose track of what's going on and everything, and so you get shot.
Did you ever get shot?
No, but they're not taught to shoot to stop you. I mean, to maim you or hurt you. They're
shooting
trained
to
shoot to kill you.
Yeah.
And quiet as it's kept, a lot of them are not good shots. I've seen guys that were getting stabbed get shot because the guy missed the guy that was stabbing him and hit him.
Man. Wow.
But that was like, so there's a whole like training process to battle in prison, is because if I'm gonna hit somebody, I want to make sure that a yard cop is close to me when I hit him,
So that way
because he's not gonna come after me because I have a weapon, right? He has a nightstick, but 9 times out of 10, as long as I got a weapon and I'm whacking this guy, he's not gonna come after me. And that guy up there with the gun, he's too close to me. This cop's too close to me, so he won't shoot me.
wow.
Yeah.
So everything's really like thought out.
Yeah, everything's thought out. Everything's mapped out. There's no spontaneous combustion.
Yeah.
It is like everything is planned.
Jeez.
Yeah.
You guys would have made good soldiers.
Yeah. That's the thing, but you make the wrong choices.
Yeah. And so at what point do you find God? Because I know you were talking about, you kind of respected the Christians to be on your own thing, but at what point does God start calling you?
That really, if you go back to first time in juvenile hall, and I always felt that inside, that not realizing it until much later, but I felt that like, this is not what I have for you. This is not what I want for you. I have so much better, and I have so much more that I want to do in your life. But yet, the rebellion and the not knowing his voice and wanting to do my own thing. You know what I mean? Just so it was a long time coming, but when it was so loud and clear that I couldn't say, that's like, I remember one time I was doing the sign at a church we were going to, and these kids walked by and they said, "God's not real." And I said, "Oh, come here. Let me tell you a story about how God's real."
Yeah.
And because like, there's no way you can tell me God's not real, because when I was the last time I was in prison, and I ran into my buddy Tony, and still part of the testimony that I had done.
Yeah, some people haven't seen it. That's kind of why I wanted you to share
Oh,
this
okay.
as well.
And when I ran into Tony, and I knew he was a Christian now, and Bible thumper, but this is my buddy. I mean, like, we've done it all together.
Yeah.
I mean, we sent people out on stretchers, and I didn't know Tony other than in prison. You know what I mean? But I love this guy to death, and I remember because like, we were in the cell one time, we were watching a movie, and it was like one of those, the dog, the cat, they're like lost in the wilderness and stuff like that.
Homeward Bound.
Yeah, Homeward Bound, like that movie. And I was up on the
Wait,
top.
you guys are in prison watching Homeward
Yeah,
Bound?
well, I mean, all right, so they,
Sorry,
years
that's kind of
back-
funny.
years back, they stopped because they have a movie channel
Okay.
that they play movies on, and they stopped anything with violence or anything.
Okay.
They're all like PG-13 movies, like
Yeah.
even some of those they won't play, but yeah, they play.
That's so
Aww,
like
movies.
little Hallmark movies.
Yeah, yeah,
and
yeah, yeah.
Lifetime.
So we're watching this, right? And I'm up on the top bunk and I'm watching it, and he's down on the bottom bunk, and we're watching this movie, and I was like, "Hey, bro," and I look down, he goes, "Hey, don't look at me right now, bro. I'm getting all emotional." And I was just like, "Wow, man, this guy is like, we're in prison, like, bro, man up."
Yeah,
No.
yeah.
But it was like,
But this kitty cat
he was
falling in
willing-
the
yeah.
water.
We were close enough that he could be like that in
Yeah.
front of me and
Oh,
not
man,
worry
that's-
about it. You know what I mean?
That's so
And-
funny, though.
And so, like, we were close, man. And so when I heard that he was a Christian, I was like, wow. Wow, man, he made that leap, you know what I mean? Because, like, but the thing is he was a Christian. He got out of prison, and then he came back to prison as a Christian. And that's what I was having a hard time wrapping
How
my
could
head
you be?
around.
How can you change your life but then end up back here? Kind of
Right.
thing?
But, as Christians, we backslide all the time.
Yeah.
We might we might backslide and start doing drugs again. And in reality, that's what had happened. Was he had backslidden and was hanging out with this other guy who we had been in prison with, and this guy had murdered some people. And so when the cops came around looking for that guy,
He was there with him.
the guy that had committed the murders had left. He ended up getting arrested later. He's on death row now. But Tony ended up getting caught with some drugs and stuff like that. So he ended up back in prison. And so when I ran into Tony, and we had that conversation, bro, like, hey, I know you're a Christian now, and if things happen, I go, I won't be on this yard long because I'm going back to B yard. I went out for a hearing, and then I came back and went through the yard that he was on my way back to my yard. And I said, but if you have any problems, you have any issues, I carry weight in this institution especially. You just let me know, bro, because if I have to, I'll have you brought to my yard. And he goes, nah, bro. He goes, I'm still me. You know what I mean? I do what I got to do. He goes, but I'm a Christian now. And he goes, but you ever think about giving your life to the Lord? I was like, oh, man, really, bro? And he was like,
You gonna do that to me?
I was like, bro, really? And he's like, bro, I'm a Christian. That's my job.
Yeah.
I have to.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And I was like, hey, all right, job done. Thank you. I appreciate it, but no. You know what I mean? And, you know, I'd gone through some things where I thought I was too far gone for God and stuff like that. And we had a little conversation.
I feel like it's a very common lie that the devil puts in people's heads, right?
Absolutely, bro. You know, like
you're not good. Like you're not a good person. Like you can't be a Christian.
well, yeah, and I thought that like right after I stabbed that dude in church in prison. You know what I mean?
You gotta rewind. You can't just throw a statement out like that.
Whoa! All right. Yeah, that is kind of random, huh?
Yeah.
But no. So I was in a prison one time, and some stuff happened, and this guy had put it out. He got jumped by some paisas,
Okay.
you know,
Yeah.
Mexican nationals, and so he got jumped by some of them, and I was under the impression that these guys just had an issue. They don't know how we do things in our prisons, and they moved on him. So I told this guy that I was going to go get their shot caller, bring him over. He was going to tell me the story in front of this guy.
To clarify everything.
Yeah, to clarify. And he goes, he's a part of it. And I go, what do you mean a part of it? And he says, well, from what they told me, he gave them the orders to jump me.
Wow.
I said, okay. All right. So now I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go get that guy. I'm going to bring him over here, and you say that in front of him. And as soon as you say it, I'm going to blast him right here. I was going to stab the dude right there. And I went and got the guy, walked him over there because he's inside the building. He can't come back. He can't come out to the yard. He's going to another yard now. And so when I brought the guy over there, he just totally recanted his story. He was like,
wow.
no, I'll take care of it my way. And this
So he
way,
makes you look like a liar almost.
Well, made me look like a fool. You know what I mean? Because I didn't tell this guy anything because I don't want to tip his hand. I'm waiting for this guy to say what he.
Yeah.
You know, I got a knife in my pocket right now, so like, I'm just gonna take off on this guy.
Wow.
And then he just kind of like backpedaled all the way back on me, and I was just like, and I had, this guy was from another area, so I had one of his homeboys there to witness, and I told his homeboy, this better get dealt with, and I told the paisa, I say, hey bro, we are done. I told him, we don't have any problems, it's over, all right? I'll deal with this. And I shook his hand, he walked away. And so right after that, so he was going over to the 1 yard. Now we were on the 2 yard. The gym split them. So the only place where we can go together is church. And so I told the guys over there, get him in the church.
The guy who had recanted the whole story.
Yeah, they
Okay.
pulled his story back. And so when he went into the church, they just thought I was going to, deal with him right there, like talk to him, beat him up, whatever, you know what I mean? And I told, a couple of my homeboys over there and some guys on his homeboys on the yard, I'm going to blast him, dude. You know what I mean? And we're talking, these guys, these are big, burly, tattooed up guys, you know what I mean? Tough guys that, like, you see them walking down the street, you think, oh, I'm across the street.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so I tell these guys, hey, I'm going to blast this fool. You know what I mean? So I tell them, like, when you see this dude, you sit him down in front of the guy next to him because I won't be sitting there. I got my head down. And as soon as the guy sat down, I jumped up and I just started hooking him up.
Wow.
You know what I mean?
Wow.
And it wasn't like I was going to walk away from it. There's a priest right there and two cops. And so, like, everybody's seen it. You know what I mean?
Did you did that where it would be known that you did it too, though, right?
Oh, yeah. There was no getting around that.
It's more of it like you're sending a message.
Yeah. That, you don't do this. You don't, like, and that's how I always ran things was like, you don't put all of us in jeopardy because of your mistakes or your screw-ups.
Okay.
You know what I mean? If you're going to do that, don't think you're going to get covered.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You're going to get put out there, and we're going to take care of you.
Wow.
And so, So
let's go back to. So now you're saying I don't feel good enough, or
Yeah,
like I could be
you
a
know,
Christian.
and
because
there's
of-
been other situations, you know, that in things that I've done in my life to where I,
Mm-hmm.
you know, thought I was too far gone for God. You know what I mean? And you know, and then it's not like a lot of gang members and prisoners. They're raised in church and raised around, you know, Catholic or Christian or Baptist or whatever families that are strong religious ties, but we don't think that's for us. You know what I mean? And so we don't want, because then you have to do good and you have to do the right thing. Yeah, I mean, and we weren't about that, and so we would always like, hey, bro, that ain't us. That ain't, you know, that's for them. That's not for us. That's for them. And so, I, you know, thought that for a lot of years, and I remember saying, because one of those guys that was right there when I blasted that dude and they handcuffed me and stuff, and he looked me straight in my eyes and he goes, "Oh my God, bro, you're going to hell for sure." I was like, "Hey, fool, it's not like you didn't know I was going to do this."
Yeah.
And he said, "So what are you saying?" I said, "If I'm going to hell, you're going to hell too. You knew I was going to do it and you let it happen." And he's like, "I'm not responsible for what you did." And then they, you know, they're taking me out. And I said, "Hey, I promise you this, I won't ever step foot in a church again."
Wow.
And until I got out of prison, man, I did not go into any churches. Because I said, okay, I messed up. I mean, and right then, I felt like God had like, that's it. Because I don't know, you know, I thought, I didn't know the Bible. I didn't know how it went. And I figured he turned his back on me. He will never accept me. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so, back to Tony. When he asked me that, you know, I was like, "Hey, bro, come on, man. You know, I can't do that. You know, and that ain't me." And he said, "Hey, bro, that's my job, bro. I gotta ask." But you know, over the years, you like, I don't care who you are, you feel that tug. You feel that tug of like, "Hey, man, this is wrong. This ain't your life. There's so much better you could be doing." You know what I mean?
I think it's because I think we're meant to be with God.
Absolutely.
We're meant to like be pulled by Him, and
Yeah.
so when you speak of His name, when you speak God and Jesus, like He's pulling at your heart, no matter where you're at.
Right.
And like I couldn't help but think, like, even though Tony had like backslid at that time, God is using all things for His purpose and for His good.
Yeah.
You know, because even that God used to plant a seed in you. You know,
Absolutely.
and that's amazing.
Yeah. And you know, the thing is I think when we feel that tug is because we know that God and sin can't be in the same place at once. And so the more you commit sin, the more it pulls God away from you. And He doesn't want to be pulled away from you. You know what I mean? But you have free will. So
Yeah.
so it's really disheartening to Him. And so He wants you to feel that you're pushing Him away. You know what I mean? So you know, and then I ended up going from that yard back to my yard, and when I got back to that yard, it was just like chaos. It was chaos, and you know, I picked up a pretty healthy drug habit when I was in Chino, because I was getting drugs for free all the time, and you know, went from real healthy to sucked up like I had got out, and
Wow.
and when I came back to the yard, I had acquired a cellie that had a lot of money, and so I could pretty much get as much drugs as I wanted and everything like that. And one day the Southsiders came to me because, you know, I'm on the streets. I'm from a Southside neighborhood, but I run with the whites in prison. And before it had never been a problem because we were together like that. But now there's like a divide.
Starting to separate.
Yeah, well, there had been. It's starting to come back together now, but there had been a bit of a division there. And I remember the Southsiders coming to me and they said, "Hey, homie, we got issues." And okay, who's got issues? Like, because I remember there was a time when the Norteños jumped on the SGV car, which are my homies, the Southsiders, and they said, the rest of the Southsiders had said, hey, they didn't jump on those Southsiders, they jumped on the SGV car. You guys handle it. And so I went to the white boys and I told them, look, man, they didn't jump on because they're from SGV. They don't care. They jumped on because they're Southsiders. And I'm telling you guys, all right, if they want to make it, they did it because they're from SGV. I'm from SGV too. Then let's handle this. And I told them, I told all the rest of the white guys, I don't know, I ain't going to speak for you guys, but I'm going to tell you right now, I'm getting in it.
Mm-hmm.
And win or lose, you know what I mean? And so all the white guys got in it because they backed me on it, you know what I mean? But with Tony, like when they came to me and they said there's issues, and I was like, well, okay, so you know, what's the issue? And they're like, there's between the whites and the Southsiders, there's more than $10,000 owed on this yard.
Oh, wow.
Which is a big deal.
Yeah.
That's a big deal. Lives can be lost for that much money. And I said, well, did you guys talk to homie that's got the keys? You know what I mean? And they said, well, he's part of the problem. And I was like, oh, man. All right. So I called the committee. I called the committee out to the yard, and I
So it became your problem, huh?
told them what was going on, what I had been approached with, and everything like that. And so the first order of business is we got to strip the keys from homeboy. And so there was the guy that actually had passed the keys off to him was still on the yard. He did it prior to us paroling and stuff, whatever his reasons were. And so his homeboys were like, hey, we can't whack him though. And a couple of us just kind of like looked at each other. And the guy that had the keys, like me, that was my road dog, man. We kicked it every day, like we were tight.
The guy who messed up.
Yeah.
Okay.
But business is business. And if you're going to take the whole car down, then...
Yeah. It's like you were saying earlier.
Yeah.
Things that jeopardize the whole thing.
Yeah. If it jeopardizes all of us, it's not worth it. You know what I mean? Especially if you're wrong. If you're in the right, then, hey, so be it. We can all die today. But if you're in the wrong, I'm not going to ask anybody to lay down their life or myself to lay down my life for something you did wrong. You know what I mean? And so, so they said, just don't whack him. And so, okay. And then we had a little separate meeting after that, and they were like, bro, you know you can't do that. It doesn't work that way. And I was like, oh, okay, well, that's your guys' car. We're going to deal with it however you guys want to. And they said, okay. Well, they sent this kid, and he had already did work, and he wasn't from their car. And I was like, well, that's wrong. So I went with him. And so that dude ended up getting whacked. And then he got caught. He had holes all over him. And
Wow.
and so that was the attempted murder. And because he had been hit in the neck, face,
Just
upper
everywhere.
chest. He had been hit 22 times.
Wow.
11 times in the face, and then some in
Wow.
the chest. And
And he didn't die?
no.
Getting stabbed 11 times in the face and in the chest and didn't die.
Yeah.
Wow.
It's, like, they don't usually use bone crushers anymore like they used to in the old days. A lot of times, like, they say, oh, yeah, they whacked him, and, it's a little piece of a fence, you know what I mean? Call it an ice pick or a razor blade. And so unless you get really extremely lucky or unlucky, they don't usually die. But the general thing is you got to make them bleed bad enough that they can't stay on the yard.
Wow.
You know what I mean? And so he got hit, and then there was another. Well, before him, there was a guy. I told the essays, look, you got to give me one debt, and we're gonna hit that guy, and then we're gonna use that to set the precedent that everybody's got to pay their debts, or this is what happens. So we did. That guy got cut up, and then he ended up going back in the cell, which was messing everything up because I needed to lay the yard down. And then, so the two kids that we sent to handle it, they were like, bro, what do we do now? And I was like, I'm gonna go give them some options. Just be ready. Get rid of the knives. I said, the razor blades. If he comes out of that cell, you guys got to take off on him. Are you down? And they said, yeah. I go, you're gonna go to the hole. So go get with homeboy. He's gonna hook you guys up with care packages, to whoop. And so they were doing that, and I went to the cell and I told the dude, I said, hey, look, bro, it ain't personal, it's business. You owe money, you didn't pay. They gave you opportunity and you still didn't pay.
Sheesh.
I said,
how do you pay $10,000 back?
well, no, it wasn't. He owed $50. It's all the white guys together.
Owed more than 10,000.
Because they said, hey man, these white guys ain't paying. They ain't, like, the money ain't landing.
I see what you're saying.
Because like when you give me like an SA gives me dope, right? I make a phone call.
And he gets paid.
I tell them, hey, you send this there over to here, and so then if that money don't land, then they come back to me and say, hey, bro, that money didn't land. Let me make a phone call, get back to you. You know what I mean? Let me see what's up.
So then this guy owed $50.
He owed $50. Right? There were some guys that owed like a couple $1,000. You know what I mean? And but they're not gonna give up one of those debts, because this one's gonna get wiped out. You know what I mean?
Okay.
And so I went to this dude and I said, look, bro, it's not personal. It's just business. You didn't pay. You had an opportunity. You still didn't pay. When you're done here, there's no smut. You go to another yard. I'm gonna send you with the kite. Everything's good. You don't owe the money no more. I told him, as long as you deal with this the right way, it's over with.
Mm-hmm.
And he's cut down on the side of his face, down his neck and stuff. So there's he goes, well, can I just patch myself up and stay? And I said, that's not an option. And I said, look, you got two options. You could come out of the cell and you'll go 2-on-1 with the kids. They're gonna jump on you, and you guys are gonna go 2-on-1 until you get caught. I go, the other option is, I'm gonna go get 2 knives. I'm gonna give you one, and I'm gonna have one. You come out of the cell, and we're gonna go chest to chest until one of us don't get up no more.
Jeez.
I mean, someone gonna die. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he was like, well, that's when he said, well, can I just patch myself? Oh, it's not an option, bro. It's not happening. So he took the option that I would not ever give to somebody because it's not going out the right way. But he told the cop, hey, he showed him that he was cut, and he said, I got to get out of here. They're going to kill me.
Wow.
Which they put the yard down, and so we got the desired results that we were looking for.
He was gone?
Yeah, he was gone.
He didn't get killed?
No. And the yard went down because I told the essays, I'm going to lay the yard down. So, and then we're going to go on lockdown, and then I'm going to put the word out that everybody has to pay. And then.
And how did this become your issue if you weren't even you didn't have the keys to the yard?
Because the guy that had the keys messed up.
It was him, huh?
Right. And so so they wanted me to take the keys. They asked me to take the keys, but I only had like 90 days till I was getting out.
You're like,
and
no.
I was like, homeboy still got like a year and a half. Give him to him, and I'm gonna help him. I'll help him, like, if he has any questions or anything like that, he could come to me.
Yeah.
But he didn't, you know what I mean? So I felt like it was kind of like my responsibility to make it right. I see. And, in whatever way I could, without getting everybody in this prison, on this yard or in a wreck. And so I was trying to do my best to do that, because the last time something had happened like this, one white dude had died. Wow. Yeah, they killed him.
So, going back to, this is the last time you were arrested, and this is when you have your encounter with God. Yeah. So, you want to talk about that?
Yeah, absolutely. That was the best part of it all. Yeah. So in that, we went on lockdown, and people started checking in and stuff like that. Checking in is like 3:00 in the morning, your cell pops, and your cellie gets up and walks out, and you're like, what's going on? Because he don't want to pay the bills, so he's just PC up. And so I put out word, hey, if your cell pops at 3 in the morning and your celly's getting up to leave, you need to take off on this dude. Don't just let him walk out untouched. So then it became apparent that, okay, well, this dude is the one, you know, because like as they're leaving, they're like, well, this guy's the one that stepped in to, he's calling shots now because he's saying this has to happen, that has to happen. So they labeled me as the shot caller on the yard, and then somebody had told them who the kid was that put the move on the guy that was calling shots, and said that, you know, so they didn't get me for the stabbing, they got me for calling the shot to have it done.
Yeah.
And so they came to my cell, and so we had put out to everybody, if your cellie leaves this yard without paperwork showing why he's leaving this yard, then you're next. And so like I had like my cellie, he was not like a guy that you would say, oh yeah, that's his cellie. Like you'd be like, what the heck? Because it was like Robert Downey Jr. Like Robert Downey Jr. can fight, but like this guy's in my cell. He's not a fighter. He's not. That's not what he is. You know what I mean?
Robert Downey Jr.
But he was such, like this guy was such a cool guy. And he was
Yeah.
funny and everything. I liked having him around me. But and he had money, so that helped. But he was like, so I told like, so when they came to my cell, it was funny because like we were on lockdown. I got up and I was going to the bathroom. Like your bed's here, your toilet's here. You know,
Yeah.
it's just like.
No privacy.
Yeah, no, not at all. So I'm standing there going to the bathroom, and I look out the window into the day room, and I see they got this big box, and they're pulling these little cups out of it, hundreds of little cups. And I was like, oh, because we had been getting high, like doing heroin, meth,
Wow.
smoking weed, all kinds of stuff. And I told my son, oh my God, we're busted. He goes, what? Like, we're busted, bro. And he goes, why? And I go, because they're testing the whole building. I go, there's no getting around it, bro. We're getting high 10 minutes ago. He's like, oh man, he starts panicking already. I go, it's only 6 months, bro. But this is his first term. He's not used to, and I was like, it's only another 6 months. Don't worry about it. So when I told the lieutenant, there was a lieutenant and a sergeant and a yard cop at my door, and when they cracked the door, my cellie, they asked my cellie, what's your name? And he said, Conley 77. And he said, no, that's not him. And I rolled over and I looked at him and they go, what's your name and number? And I said, White 96. So you always give your last name and the last two of your number, your prison number. And they said, that's him. They said, all right, get down. So I got down, you know, I'm just in boxers and my flip-flops and shower shoes. And, I said, put your hands behind your back. And I said, with all due respect, I'm not cuffing up until I get some paperwork. I go, what am I going to the hole for? And he said, nobody said you were going to the hole. I said, we're on lockdown. There's a lieutenant, a sergeant, and a cop standing at my door, and you guys are wanting me to cuff up. I'm going to the hole. Believe that. I'm not dumb. This is my first rodeo. I said, all right, Lou, I told the lieutenant, I go, Lou, I'm going to be straight up with you. If you guys take me out of this cell and you take me to the hole and my cellie don't get paperwork and he can't explain and show why I was taken out of this cell and he didn't put hands on me by my own call, he's going to get whacked. And I am not going to allow that to happen.
Wow.
I told him, so you can do what you got to do, but it ain't going to go down. I'm not going to allow you guys to cuff me up. And he said, he told me, he goes, you have my word that I will get it's called a 114D. It's a lockup order. He goes, I will get a copy of the 114D to your cellie, like within 10 minutes. And I said, okay. And I put my hands behind my back and they took me. And so they took me over there and they came and they said, the representative from the DA's office said that, they're going to be filing this charge. And then it was like 4 assaults with a deadly weapon, conspiracy to introduce narcotics into an institution, attempted murder, conspiracy to commit murder, and all these things. And
All these charges.
Huh?
So you're just getting all these charges?
Yeah,
now, huh?
yeah, and each one, because anything that didn't carry 25 to life on its own validity would have been a third strike, which would have carried 25 to life as well.
Wow.
And so they said, like, they're willing to make you a deal for 25 years to life, one sentence of 25 to life. I'm like, what's the difference? Stack them up or break them down. That's the same thing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? I still be here forever. I'm like 90 days to the house doing this. And so I was like, then we're going to go to court. And I kind of felt they were bluffing, you know. And so they took me to the hole. The one guy that got stabbed that had the keys, I seen him. He was in, they're called like phone booths. And it looks like a phone booth, but it's a cage. And they put me next to him.
Okay.
I think hoping that we would, like, I don't know, go at it or something. And I just told him, I said, hey, bro, it was not personal. And I said, bro, you screwed up. You know what I mean? It's not personal. It's business. It had to happen. And he said, yeah. He goes, I know. He said, put me down as a witness in your 115 hearing, and I'll tell him it wasn't you. And tell homeboy too, the other kid. You know what I mean? And I was like, okay. And so him, the other guy that got hit, and they were all both not willing to testify or anything like that. And so I knew the case was getting weaker and weaker as it went. And they tried to get me for conspiracy to introduce narcotics because although my cellie was buying all the drugs from these Hispanic dudes, I kept all the information, so they would always look at me and not him. You know what I mean? Because if they take me, he could still pay. If they took him, I couldn't pay, so then that was going to be a problem. So it was kind of selfish, you know? But so in that, because it was white guys that got stabbed by white guys, they're not going to put you with other white guys until they figure out what's going on, because like they can't afford for people. If people get hurt and they get murdered or whatever in prison, they have to answer to somebody's family for that. And there's generally a lawsuit that goes along with it because that's your job to protect them. And so I was placed on single cell walk alone status. So I couldn't have a cellie. I couldn't go to yard with nobody or nothing like that. So you're there with yourself. You know what I mean? Nobody else, just you. You get to talk to the guy the next cell, but that's about it. And I just remember, man, sitting in that cell, and it was all dark, and just sitting there and had my head down, and I just kept hearing Tony.
Wow.
Hey, Rip, you ever think about giving your life to the Lord? I was like, man. And I just said, okay, God. If you're real and that's what it is, man, then you know what? I promise you, if you could do something to change this, I'll change. I'll change everything. And pretty soon I got pulled out for my 115 hearing and was told that they exceeded their time constraints. And they couldn't, the first thing they told me was the DA had elected to drop all charges. So there was going to be no DA referrals, no court, none of that. So life was off the table. And so I figured, all right, well, I'll be here another year because that's all the good time they could take. And he started chuckling, and he goes, that's the kicker. He goes, we exceeded our time constraints, so I can't even do that. He goes, so you're going to stay in the hole until your release date. And I go, when's that? And he said, I think it's like 85 days or something like that.
Wow.
And I was just like, oh my God. You know, I knew God was real. I knew that that he was there for other people. But that was my come to Jesus moment where there's no way, no how anybody on this planet or anywhere else could convince me that God's not real.
Mm-hmm.
And I knew at that time that he had not given up on me.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That I was still worth something.
Wow.
You know, and I was just like, wow, I was totally amazed at like the extent, because you know you go through these times when like you know you're going into court and stuff, and you're like, you know, God, if you could make this stuff go away, man, it'd be awesome, and you know, but God sees your heart, you know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that like he looked inside and seen my heart, and he knew I was done. I was done. I couldn't do this no more.
What would you say to someone who's in the position that you were in right now?
That it's never too late, and that God has a plan,
Mm-hmm.
and just because we don't know it,
Mm.
and just because we don't believe that it's for us, it's always somebody else.
Mm-hmm.
Don't believe the lie. That's
Yeah.
the enemy. That's the enemy, man. And God, if you're willing, God is able
Amen.
for anything,
Mm-hmm.
anything. You know, I seen a guy one time. He was on death row. He was on death row, and this little Christian legal beagle guy, that was his thing. He used to love to just look at people's cases and see what was going on with them. But he used it because he could always talk about God while he's talking about their legal status and what's going on with
Mm-hmm.
them. And he had gotten a hold of this guy's paperwork, and the guy was sitting on death row, and he told him, hey, God pointed something out to me. And he's like, what's that? And he said, they violated your civil rights. And he was like, what? He goes, they violated your civil rights. He goes, dude, I would have never found this, but God pointed it out to me. And he goes, you want to come off death row? And he's like, yeah. And so he goes, all right, I'm gonna write up all the paperwork. You just gotta sign it. And he goes, I gotta do an indigent for you, so it don't cost you no money. And you gotta get all your transcripts from your trial. And he goes, you didn't take a deal? He goes, for death? No. He goes, I was found guilty. He goes, okay, because if you took a deal, then it voids everything.
It's out of his hands. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and he said, no. He goes, and I don't think anybody would take a deal for death. But he ended up getting it overturned, and he came off death row and thought he was going to be doing life in prison.
Mm-hmm.
And he was like, okay, I'll do life in prison. I'm off death row. Well, it took the guy, I think it was like 5 years to go through his appeals. And that dude ended up walking out of prison.
Wow.
From death row to walking out of prison, man.
Mm-hmm.
And this guy he goes, it was his thing, man. He was doing life in prison, you know, turned his life over to God when he got in prison, just started reading law books. And he said, I just found the way that God wants to use me to.
Wow. So the guy who helped the other guy, used to be a prisoner?
No, the guy that helped the other guy is still a prisoner. He may be dead by now, but
wow.
he was doing life without in prison. And when he got sentenced, he, you know, in trying to fight his own appeals, he started digging into law books and exhausted all of his appeals, found out he was never going to get out. But he really enjoyed reading the laws and knowing the laws and stuff like that, and got really good at it.
Wow.
And so in the interim of that, you'll find a lot of lifers in prison. They come to the realization that, you know, God is real, and God, we need God. And so he did that, and then he found his ministry was to just try to help people that may be wrongfully accused or.
Yeah, well, that's amazing, because
Yeah.
if you let yourself be an instrument of God, like, he'll use you anywhere.
Yeah, that's like, you know, I have another friend, and he ended up getting arrested. He's doing 800 years to life.
Wow.
For contract murders, and
800 years.
800 years to life. And yeah, like you need the life on there. Just flat 800 wouldn't.
Yeah.
Even with halftime, you got to do 4. But I know his brother real well, you know, and stuff like that. And I was over the house, and he was telling me, his brother was telling me, he goes, yeah, man. He goes, Ricky's preaching in prison. I was like,
No
what?
way.
This guy was a hope to die heroin addict. You know what I mean?
Wow.
And I was like, no way. And he goes, yeah, dude, he got ordained. He's a minister.
It's amazing.
I was like, no way, dude. He goes, yeah. He goes, when the priest or the pastor, when he goes on vacation, he asks Ricky to preach for him while he's gone.
Wow.
Yeah. And I was like, that is crazy, bro. And he goes, and you think about it, you're a Christian now too. And he goes, man, bro. And he goes, and we started going to church. And I was like, I was just amazed at, like, you know, how God, it's not even that like we're so special or that we're doing, but people see that, like, man, as messed up as that guy was, and it's all the things that he did, and now he's serving God. And he goes, man, there's probably something to this. Maybe I should try it. And so his brother ended up calling one day when I was over there, and he was like, bro, he goes, this is crazy, the way my life is now. He said, because, you know, when I got sentenced and I ended up coming in prison, he goes, I had 2 choices. I could keep doing what I was doing and being just a soldier for the enemy and just being evil and doing whatever, or I could try to help people change their lives and work for God. And he said, and I chose that I was going to work for God, and I just started reading the Bible and, you know, got hooked up with some guys and started learning about the Bible, and then started taking some Bible classes in here. And he said, bro, he goes, you know what? He goes, it may sound funny, but he goes, I've never been more free in my whole life than I am right now.
Wow.
And he said, because, like, even when I was out there, he goes, I was addicted to heroin. He goes, I was thinking about the next place I was going to rob and how I was going to get money to get high and all this stuff. And he goes, it was always a trap and a chain that kept me bonded. And he said, now he goes, man, he goes, dude, I just, like, I wake up every day and I think about, like, how am I going to pour the word of God into somebody in here? You know what I mean?
It's amazing.
Yeah.
It's amazing that, like, these are all things that God's word just speaks to us.
Yeah.
Until we, like, apply it to our lives and allow God to work in us, then we understand when he says there's freedom, you know?
Yeah.
When like, not till you apply it, then you understand what God's grace is, you know? Because outside of that, they're just words.
Yeah.
But when you live for God and you change your life and you really just begin to seek him and allow him to transform you, you know, then you begin to understand the words that he spoke.
Right.
And the weight that they carried.
Absolutely.
You know?
And then you're like, oh man, it makes sense.
It makes sense. Yeah.
Because, you know, I remember, like, people tell me, well, just read the Bible. And I would get the Bible in prison. I read that thing from cover to cover. And I'm like, I don't understand nothing in this. You know what I mean? And I have people like that, and I tell them, like, dude, it's you're going to get the understanding. The closer you draw to God and the closer you get to God, the more understanding he's going to give you. But he's going to, you know, it's like the talents, you know what I mean? He gives you a little, and see, can he trust you with it? You know what I mean? If you're just going to get it and hang on to it, maybe it can't be trusted just yet. But when you can get it and give it to others and share it and just rejoice in it, man, he's like, man, let me give this guy some more.
Yeah. It's awesome. Well, Tim, thank you so much for sharing your story.
Man, thanks for having me, bro.
It's been an incredible story.
Yeah.
I feel like there should be a part 2 to this because I'm sure there's more to share.
Yeah, anytime, bro. You let me know.
Yeah, and definitely will want to do that. But thank you so much, Tim, and it means a lot to me that you were just able to open up. Like, before we started the podcast, I asked you, I'm like, how much do you want to share? And you're like, I'm an open book. And I'm like, all right. And praise God that.
Yeah, because, you know, like we said, bro, like, we don't want to leave nothing for the enemy to use. And anything that, like, he would try to make you feel shameful of. Like, and there's so much more there's so much more that I could share with you. But like I've learned that like I'm not gonna allow him to make me feel shameful
Yeah.
of anything that God has brought me through, because only by the grace of God
Amen.
am I still sitting here today.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I would hope that anything that I say would glorify God in how He's brought me through my life. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Amen.
Amen.
All right, thank you so much, Tim.
All right, thank
and
you.
We'll catch you guys on the next episode. Thank you, guys.